Yeah, I'm still fine to do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I thought she called on me whether we were ready. So I just wanted to clarify before we start.
Oh, no, I was saying, Mr. Bell, are we ready? Because I thought
Okay.
Larry was doing it tonight.
We're good. We're good.
Okay.
So, okay. Well, yeah. I mean, we're 6 minutes over, and I think we have everyone that we're expecting. So we will go ahead and get started. Let me I apologize. I have been chatting and not pulling up the agenda like I should have been. Give me just a second. Okay, so I will officially call our meeting to order, our February meeting of the Non-Discrimination Ordinance Subcommittee. Excuse me. Welcome, everybody. Wanda, do you want to do introductions of your new staff? Did we? I apologize. Did we do that in January?
Yes, we did.
Okay.
Would you like for them to reintroduce, or are you okay?
I think we'll be okay.
Okay.
Because everyone who is here today was on the January meeting. We don't have anyone on the subcommittee who was not at the January meeting. So we should be all set then.
Okay.
Sorry, I was getting the committee meeting confused with the subcommittee. There's just too much going on.
That's okay. I know. No problem.
So, all good. Okay, well, I don't think we have any welcome or we have lots of welcoming, but I don't think we have any introductions then. Unless anyone has anything that they'd like to kind of start the meeting off with, we will go ahead and move into our subcommittee or into our focus group reports, because I know that that we're probably going to have a lot to cover with that today. Okay, great. We will go ahead and move in. Let me zip back to the agenda, and we will go ahead and start the focus group reporting. And of course today, and I'm pretty sure everyone on this is all set for it. Today we wanted to either bring forward recommendations that our subcommittees, that our focus groups are starting to feel good about, either in a way that hey, this is what we want to propose, or kind of floating it by the rest of the committee, which unfortunately is only the four of us today, but still that's something. Or if we're stuck, if we've hit a wall, if we don't really have recommendations, then today is the day to get that out in the open and to brainstorm and to get some ideas and to see where we can go with that. So we will go ahead and start with housing, which our housing members that are here today are Jake and Melissa. And I think Dre had sent out like the list of the housing stuff. I do not have that ready to present, but I can probably grab that if you'd like to do that.
Yeah, I think if that could be screen shared, that might be helpful for everyone to see as we run through.
Okay, let me grab it. Sorry, I had work and then picked up the kid and then a few other things, and I didn't get as ready as I meant to get. So let me find that real quick.
And I wonder if you might I can't remember who started this document, whether it wasn't myself. I don't know, Melissa or Mir, or maybe it was John Dre who.
Mir. Yeah.
Okay. I just want to make sure it wasn't someone who had to rotate off the committee to make sure we would continue to have access to it, or if we need to make an official copy for the city or something.
Okay, I will share screen. Oh, host disabled participant screen sharing. So if I am going to share a screen, I will need someone to enable screen sharing. Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah.
Oh, no, not yet. Ah, there we go. Share. housing recommendations. Share. Oh, nice. And then, the meeting then moves over to the right, so I can still see everyone's smiling face. Okay, I've got it up. I will let you guys kind of walk through it if you like.
Well, Melissa, do you want to take a swing? Should I say some things? I'm either way.
Oops, I just, hold on a second. Jake, go ahead. I mean, you did a wonderful job of really pulling everything together, I think. So I'd love for you to go ahead and walk through that.
All right. Well, the housing work group had a meeting and kind of put together some of the thoughts. I know this subcommittee's been at it something like 7 or 8 months now, so we've had a number of discussions and kind of fleshed out some ideas, and so we tried to turn that into writing, and a few questions came up along the way too. But for our housing specific recommendations, at least our first draft that we're hoping can go to the HRC as a full group to look at, are that we would recommend the city issue recognition, whether by stickers, plaques, or certificates to local sites, including businesses and those related to housing that participate in non-discrimination trainings put on by the city so they can demonstrate a commitment to the LGBTQ community. So this is really kind of mirroring what happens with safe zone trainings that a variety of LGBTQ centers do, and other ways of just kind of honoring and recognizing that folks go through the trainings. So I know there's new staff on board to help out with some of that, and we're so excited to have you on there. And one thought we had was just to kind of, since we aren't really a home rule state, we're really more of the city can encourage things a lot more often than we can require things, and we just want to honor and recognize that folks are going through these trainings. So one suggestion is doing these trainings and then having some kind of public facing recognition, stickers, plaques, certificates, maybe a notation even on a website or something to kind of honor and recognize that they went through these trainings. And that's a nice and visible reminder for the local queer community that these spaces are welcoming, they are affirming, they've gone through this kind of base level training. That was one piece of it. The next bullet point was recommending the city fund additional gender neutral beds and emergency housing for youth and young adults that are welcoming to LGBTQ community members and offer LGBTQ competency trainings to the local shelters and housing facilities. And I think I've previously shared an example that Atlanta uses for their kind of shelters 101 training that the city does for the local shelters there. So that might be a model, but there may be other ones out there that the new staff with their expertise would be able to pull together. We've also, I think, previously shared some national LGBTQ training resources, but making sure that dual prong, we want to make sure that the local shelters are kind of supported, they're trained, they know what's going on, that they're welcoming, and if it's possible, and I know that would probably ultimately fall to the city council to decide if there could be additional funding that's targeted in that way. But that's one of the recommendations we want to make there. The third bullet point, we recommend that the city add language about non-discrimination to the boilerplate rental agreements that are used locally. And this one, I think Mir and DeAndre had kind of fleshed out, so I don't want to speak on their behalf too much. But they did list some questions here that I don't know if city staff could look into or who would be appropriate to look into. But I think the notion was if local agencies that do housing rental kind of situation were encouraged to build in more non-discrimination language up front to let people know about their rights more upfront, that might be one useful way to get that information out there.
Jay, can I jump in for a second?
Yeah.
I wanted to ask if Jamie could zoom in a little more.
Oh, sorry, it's me.
Oh,
I will.
Josh, thank you.
No, that's add comment.
If not, don't
Oh,
worry.
there it is.
That 100%,
Okay.
yeah, might do it.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am, that's a good suggestion.
And this bullet point that Mir and DeAndre put together, I think part of the notion was, since we're kind of lay citizens, we don't know the answers to all these questions. So as a part of that recommendation, it was just really kind of passing it on to the city to see, is that feasible and how it'll work, and understanding that we as a subcommittee probably can't answer all the questions, but we can still include a recommendation. And that's why it's a recommendation, because ultimately folks higher up will decide, is it the right fit or not, or does it need tweaking? Moving on to the fourth bullet point, and if we could scroll down a little bit, because I see that has some sub bullet points. We recommend that the city offer LGBTQ competency training, not just to shelters, but also to other folks that do housing. So apartment management companies and landlords to promote these trainings through city groups. I know we've talked about the evictions group and the affordable housing group as potential spaces for getting the word out, but there may be other spaces. Tenants should be specifically targeted as a part of the larger public. So that was kind of a dual thing we're thinking about, of how do we reach not just the people who are the renters and also the rentees, or so folks on both sides of the equation, both sides of that kind of power dynamic. And some thoughts about it could be doing trainings, doing town halls that people come to, doing trainings where you go out to them to do the education, potentially some mass mailings, although again, that's going to come into requiring some level of city funding if that were to happen, but some way to reach not just those who already have the most power in this kind of dynamic, but the people who'd be most affected by it. And there are a couple questions here that I think maybe Mira or Dre had added as well. And then we had a few recommendations, if we scroll down a little farther, that kind of reached beyond our scope as a housing work group, but were still ones that kind of come up in discussion, and we want to make sure those were captured or written down somewhere. One is something we've already talked about, and it sounds like HRC has already been working on for a couple of these things, but one of them was we recommend that the Human Relations Commission collaborate with the Historic Resources Commission, so getting both of our HRCs in there to recognize and honor local LGBTQ sites. And we recommend that these two commissions pursue any funding for this effort from the City Council, as well as looking into any state or national funding sources. And it sounded like Michelle had found, from the Historic Resources Commission, had found some national funds to apply for. And I think that would be amazing if we could score some national funds to help out with this. I think additionally, looking at the National Historic Registry, if there's anything here that could qualify. But also we wanted to make sure we didn't wait on these big national efforts to happen. The city could ideally go ahead and get some funding from the City Council, even if it's a small amount potentially, and put up some plaques or have an event to put something on a website to do some kind of recognition. And so that's when we kind of had that dual language of what can we do locally and what resources can we tap into nationally. Our second bullet point was we recommend the city pursues 100% municipal rating score from the Human Rights Campaign. So yet a third HRC in our bullet points, by taking the same actions as Greensboro, Chapel Hill, and Durham have to have earned that score. So there are a number of municipalities across the state who have earned 100%, including our neighbors in in Greensboro. And that was something we were keeping an eye on, like what's the highest score we can score in this state? We know we're not a home rule state, we're more of a Dillon's rule state. There's certain kind of limited powers the city has, what's within our capacity to do. But we feel like if 3 cities have hit that 100% and several others have gotten pretty close, then that's probably within the city's power to make the kind of policy changes that would get us all the way there. And part of it too, I think, is just a communication issue, making sure all the great stuff the city is already doing is something this national organization that does these rankings knows about. And I know the Human Relations Commission is already doing some good work around that. So we just wanted to kind of bolster and support that with putting that into our recommendations. And then our final recommendation was we recommend the city paint a rainbow pride crosswalk somewhere downtown, somewhere that folks can see. And we recommended specifically the Pride Progress flag colors. And what sets that apart from the standard rainbow flag is it also has trans inclusive colors, and it has the black and brown stripes for racial justice included. So we wanted to make sure we use one of the broader versions of it in this recommendation. And I know there had been some other efforts to look into how the city might pursue this that maybe ended up getting stalled. And so we thought, if we have these things in our recommendations, that's just one more avenue to kind of nudge that forward. So that's really the set of recommendations we have from the housing work group.
That is fantastic. You guys did incredible work there. These are great recommendations.
Thank you. A good team effort.
Yeah, it sounds like it. That's awesome. Does anyone have any questions or anything to add or kind of comments on? Okay, well, I'm gonna scroll up because I thought and I may have already lost it, but I had something that kind of popped into my head for a second while we were going through, and I'm trying to remember what it was. Oh, with your second bullet point, the fund additional gender neutral beds. Do we know what like the status is now as far as like the number of total beds available? Are there any gender neutral beds? Are there like do we have any idea like how many we would try to recommend, a certain percentage, a certain number at each location? I'm talking a lot without letting you answer. I should probably just let you answer. So go ahead.
That's a really good question. And that's something I think we would just hope that either the HRC or city staff could look into, maybe look into places like Atlanta that already have the trainings and see what's kind of comparable for like cities. I don't know if we have much already. Anecdotally, from my time with North Star and people asking for recommendations and people sharing their personal experiences, we aren't in a great place right now. But that's not scientific. I can't put a number to that. So I think the best we can do is recommend that the city do better and the city do some comparison shopping to benchmark against like-sized cities who are doing well with this.
Yeah, and in the research with the shelters, there was confirmation that there's not a whole lot of training in this area going on or available, and they're all excited about the opportunity to have something become available. So, yeah.
That's awesome. That's fantastic. Okay. Yeah, well, and then the other thing is that like this is our first shot of recommendations, right? And so
Right.
so it's great to get those out and have those questions. See if then we the royal we, all of us, department and commission and focus groups and whatever, can start to get some of those details hammered out, you know, by the time we do an actual proposal. That's fascinating. I didn't know someone could. That's not me editing.
But that's me. I was just adding in what we were just talking about.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Yeah, I don't
I
own
didn't
this
know you could
document,
do
but
that
I
on the
do have
share.
edit permissions.
That's amazing. So, okay. I'm just gonna kind of skim back over it. One of the things that I was really excited about is that I think a lot of this dovetails with some of the suggestions that DeAndre and I were going to make for social services, and I'll get to that when we're talking about that. But this is exciting.
I think these are great recommendations as well, Commissioner Price. I think that a lot of this is, of course, things that you all brought up in the months past, but particularly when it comes to landlord tenant and all of that, that of course really resonates with our department as well. But I again, when I read this, I was really wowed by it all. So I just think you all did a great job as well. And of course, you know, as the need arises, we can invite our city attorney, you know, back to one of our NDO meetings down the road and get her input too, because I do understand that you all want to make sure that you are recommending items that can actually be actionable, you know, that can actually
Right.
be implementable, not just tossing things out there and then there's no way that, I know you want to make sure it's tangible, real, impactful recommendations that can benefit the community. And so I do recommend that, you know, if you all weren't thinking that way, that you strongly consider having her to come back to maybe work with you on a few of these items. I think there were a couple of things farther down. Yeah, there's one right there under that fourth bullet about a question for the city attorney regarding owners who are out of state and so forth. That's the exact type of thing that I was thinking of that would be really good just to get her feedback on upfront. So you would know how to modify it as needed, or if it's even possible.
Right.
We do want to make sure we stay within the authority that we are given by the state, as Jake was alluding to earlier.
Very good. Okay, any other thoughts or questions before we move on?
I have a I don't think it's a question. I think it's a thought. Um, I can't say I had given much thought about having beds specifically for LGBTQIA plus community, and I think that's a good thought. I think that would be a great implementation. Don't think about that in that arena, and I think um, bringing bringing information like this to the forefront, I think is really great because I don't know if they do, and I think those were some of the questions, Josh, you were alluding to. Is this something that they do? If they do, how many? And if they don't, how many could we get? Could be allocated specifically for that. And I was even thinking more so when you were talking, where where would those beds have to be separate in a separate area? What would that look like? So I think those are I like that one. I think that's great.
Mhm.
And one resource to reach out to, which may be beyond the scope of subcommittee members, but if folks wanted to, as they were starting to look at implementation, is the Williams Institute out of UCLA. They've done some research around folks experiencing homelessness as youth, and some of their studies have found up to 40% of the youth who are experiencing homelessness are LGBTQ identified. And that's a much higher rate than we are in the population as a whole. So I think that disproportionately high representation is one indication of need around this, but that may also be an organization that would have some expertise on the specifics of the implementations too.
Mm-hmm. Because some of the kids that age out of foster care, housing is an issue across the board. But to um, have young people that age out of foster care and don't have anywhere else to go, you know, having having beds and things identified specifically for them at shelters would be great because they do struggle with housing, leaving different entities as they turn 18 plus. So I would like to look at this and see what it says because that is I think that's very pivotal, especially at this time of the year when individuals are seeking shelter, right, from the cold and the terrain. So I think that will be some good information to have. That's great. Thank you.
Wanda, kind of a follow-up or a detailed question on that. So, so if say that is a recommendation that we went with, that to add more beds, and let's even say that we were able to get a little bit more details around that, and we said 4 beds per location or whatever we need to do. Um, how would that? And let's say the city council loved it and approved it and stamped it, and we're good. How would that go through an implementation? And like, how many of those questions, kind of like what Carrie just brought up, do we need to answer in the proposal? Like, well, they would need to be separated and they would need to have their own bathroom associated or get whatever. Like, is it okay for us to be somewhat vague and then have the implementation team, whoever that is, kind of handle those issues or come back to us or whatever? Or do we need to get really, really, really detailed so that we are laying out like a very specific plan?
Well, Josh, I think the answer falls somewhere in between. I don't think you want to get so specific that you end up, kind of blocking yourselves in terms of
Sure.
the basic idea is the basic premise, but you don't want to be so vague that people are like, huh, and scratching their head.
Sure.
And so I think it's kind of in the middle. If for instance, with this particular item, you wanted to say, or you wanted to add that it would be advisable for there to be separate bathrooms and it would be advisable for the beds to be blah, blah. You could say that, but of course, all of that would be subject to whatever criteria and restrictions or requirements that they may have in facilities. Because these facilities, depending on their funding sources and so forth, they may already have certain things like that they would have to abide by and adhere to. But if not, then I think that type of guidance would probably be beneficial, or at least it would get their juices flowing in terms of how that may work out.
Okay, good, good. Yeah, I mean, oh, go ahead, Melissa.
Yeah, I was thinking more that, rather than, I don't know that the city would have the ability to dictate that you have to have this many beds. And that's where I think like the legal part of it comes in, like what can the city recommend, or what can the city require shelters to have? And that probably does come down to where they're receiving funding from, and any reporting requirements and things like that come along with that. But I think the big thing will be in the training that may be provided, and helping to identify things that shelters can do to help increase the comfort level and the welcomeness of any LGBTQ people, and how to maybe accommodate them in a way that makes them feel safe and welcome and included. And I think that the training is going to be the important piece of it. And I definitely think that from my conversations with the shelters, they're really looking to get some help in that area too.
And to your point, Melissa, and thank you for sort of reinforcing and reiterating my point, which is, again, we have to always go back to what their requirements are. They do have their own requirements and rules and regulations. And of course, again, it would depend on their funding sources. And so, of course, they would have to adhere to those requirements. As far as the city's ability to mandate what they can and cannot do, that's where we kind of get into the weeds. And perhaps, yes, Angela would be helpful there, but I would still say that, if they have a certain set of criteria that they must follow, that would probably be their number one source for guidance, is to make sure that they're following that. And then naturally, if the city could have some sway in terms of maybe making suggestions or recommendations, even that in and of itself sometimes can be pretty impactful, even if the city can't mandate per se.
Okay,
Yeah.
that all makes a lot of sense. And excuse me for about 20 seconds. I will be right back.
Sure.
And I do seem to recall City Attorney Carmen mentioning during a previous meeting a while back, there may be some of those same limitations you were just talking about in terms of what the city can mandate. So even if it comes down to this is what the city encourages, this is what they recommend, these are best practices we're trying to help establish, or further, if the city council could approve any additional funds saying you can get these funds if you meet these qualifications. But again, I know every time we say city council has to approve it and there has to be more money involved, that's additional hurdles to overcome. But even the level of recommendations and suggestions and best practices could still be valuable.
Exactly, Jake. Exactly. I agree.
Okay, wonderful. Well, does anyone have any further thoughts or questions on what we've got in front of us on the housing and beyond housing recommendations? Okay, great. I'm going to pause share and tab over to look at my agenda. Or am I? Dang it, where did I put it?
So we have economic mobility next, and Jerry.
Thank you, Melissa. I appreciate that. Now I'm just all over the place. There we go. Okay, at least I'm back. So obviously Jerry's not here today, and then Quint was the other person who was on economic mobility before he needed to drop. Does anyone have any thoughts or suggestions around economic mobility that they'd like to propose or share? Okay, very good. Well, that is certainly something that we can remain open to right up until we draft our final proposal. So if people have thoughts, and of course, there's a chance that they'll just get kind of any economic mobility ideas we do have are going to get folded into things like beyond housing, right? Or as people have extra ideas, they're going to come out in their proposals. So I'm not too worried about that. There's nothing that says we have to have one proposal from each focus group, so that's okay. But definitely, as you're still thinking about things and getting things worked out, if you have any of those ideas, please feel free to share. So, okie dokie. Next was outreach and visibility, if I recall correctly. And I'm sorry, I'm having technical difficulties. There we go. And that is Amaris and Jerry and DeAndre. So Amaris, you're the only one here today for that. So if you'd like to talk through it, that's fine. If you've got something you'd like to share, you'd like me to share, then we can certainly do that as well.
Yes, I have a document. If I'm able to share my screen, I'll share it.
Perfect. Jamie's working on it now. I can see that look in her eyes.
It should work. You should have share screen at the bottom.
Okay. Okay, so Dre and I had a couple of discussions, and there were really two main ideas that we just kind of landed on. The first is similar to one of the ideas proposed by the housing group, which is a decal program of some sort for not only businesses, but also organizations and individuals, and that this program would not need to be specific to LGBTQIA+ persons or protected groups under the NDO, but all of the inclusive groups identified in NDO. And so we were thinking that it would, include visible displays, stickers for storefronts, but yeah, that we could also perhaps work with the Chamber of Commerce. Of course, we don't know, or we're not certain of the city's influence on what the chamber does, right? But just perhaps as an outreach, as an invitation to the chamber to, on their site, also include shields next to businesses that have volunteered to participate in the signing into the program. We believe that these visible displays could be encouraging for some patrons, but there are also challenges that a program like this might face. First off, it could be off-putting to people who are not in support of the NDO. So a business may feel that it's risky for them to, come out and put these stickers or displays, have them attached to their business. Or they may feel that they'll be at risk of being targeted. There are some members of the protected populations who may feel that such an identification is unnecessary or might feel confining to them. If these businesses start putting up stickers, are these the only places that I'm supposed to go? If a place doesn't put up a sticker, is that a signal that I'm not supposed to go there? Those types of things. But also just the idea that the visible display or the icon on a website or an organization being listed on a website somewhere, that it could also falsely signal that there's some opting into the reach of the NDO when there isn't, right? And so we would want to be very careful about that. So we could see benefits of such a program, but we wanted to bring forth what we have identified as potential challenges to such as we continue to have our discussions with the broader group. We went through and just picked a few links within the document that people could follow to kind of research some other places that are doing similar programs, and to as we would craft the program that we would provide as a recommendation to the city, we would try to take the best of what we could find in these different places. The program that we found in Ithaca, it was open to businesses and organizations. One of the key components here that I thought would be important to highlight is that they provided a lot of support to businesses who wanted to participate in the program. So if an organization says, yes, I want to get a decal and put it up in my store, they also provided them opportunities for education, support in developing policies for their organization, so that they could properly implement the NDO, and also help them provide clear statements for their customers and patrons. Like, this is what this decal means. And this is how you can answer questions that a customer might have about it. So I thought the fact that they included that support was a key piece of what could make their program successful. And, that it wasn't just getting a sticker and moving on. But also there was a program in Milwaukee. They were linked to their Chamber of Commerce. They really leaned into the potential for increasing business in the aspect that, people see these signs, they feel welcomed, they're encouraged to spend more money there, right? So they really leaned into that aspect of it. But just another common component of the program is that it's easy to acquire the decals, the stickers, just having that really low bar for participation. Like, it's easy to come into it. There's another program called the Welcoming Project. This was a nonprofit organization. Their key component to highlight from them is that they have a searchable online list. So then, if you want to find a therapist, a family counselor who has opted into their program, you can search for that online, and makes it really easy for people to identify businesses that they would that have agreed to participate in this additional step. And then the last link is for the Unity Pledge associated that's found in Arizona. And this one leaned into 4 areas to promote businesses, to invite them in. And that was about increasing tourism, attracting businesses to the area, attracting talent, and their reputation. So as far as visibility for the city of Winston-Salem, as far as visibility around the NDO, these are just ways in which it can be beneficial for the community, is that it can, can also do these things. They include opportunities not only for businesses, but organizations and individuals, faith-based organizations. So those are just some things we wanted to highlight from that organization. So the document that I can send over to you, Josh, and I'm not sure how we're distributing the documents to the rest of the team, but it will contain the links, and folks could follow up on at least these programs that we researched, and add others that you find as we continue to talk about how we could develop a recommendation for some sort of either city program or city guided program. Perhaps the program would be built by a coalition of community organizations with the city's guidance, right? So those are just things to continue to flesh out. The second main idea that we landed on was just days of visibility, to encourage the city to participate in different days of visibility. And that could be with flags that are flown at city and municipal flagpoles, messages on the website, city news channels, and just identify particular days of observance that we would regularly recognize. And just really kind of promote that from a city level as another set of ideas. So that's where we kind of landed with our conversations. Are there any questions for me?
I love the days of visibility. Like, I've seen flags in other cities, and I've never thought, well, why don't we do that here? But yeah, so many cities do that.
And we also have the honorary street naming, where you can apply for a street to take on name temporarily too for a period of time. So that could be something that could fall under that.
Yeah, and that could be a nice connection to some of the historical landmark pieces that were discussed in the earlier recommendations. All right. Well, if there are no questions, I'll pass it back to you, Josh.
Okay, great. Yeah, no, this is good work, and I know you're not quite to like a recommendation standpoint, but that's a really good foundation for some recommendations there. That's fantastic.
And was that were you speaking of the decals? Would that be for businesses?
It could be businesses, organizations, and I wanted to, we wanted to include individuals as well because, for example, teachers may be able to display something within their classrooms, whereas the school itself, may or may not make that decision, but a teacher could make a decision, and that could, provide, again, like the safe spaces idea, like Jake mentioned, it could, that sends messages and protections for people passing through those classrooms. But yeah, the decals would be for businesses, organizations, or even individuals.
Yeah, I could see that, within the city. I was just looking to see what cities have flags that are flown in their states. I'm not sure about the schools though. I mean, I know that they are working, but I think that would be I think there would be maybe something going through the school board to maybe to have things placed in classrooms. And there may be where some teachers at some levels may, I don't know, coming from the school system myself, I don't know about that one. As we approach, I think that would be a school board. I think there may be something that the school board would have, maybe look at, or maybe by different principles. But I think it would be a great idea when you talk about safe spaces for our young people. I think that's very important. But I think those are really great ideas. I look forward to seeing some of those things around our city eventually.
Yeah, I know that with the school district being a county entity, that is a different, it's different oversight. But having been a teacher, I think I would have had the freedom to say that this is something that I believe in personally, like a mayor's car, right? Not Ms. Carr, the school teacher, but a mayor's car, the individual. This is something that I believe in, and in this space, this is how I will, treat people. But I do think that, yeah, that's definitely a place for.
Yeah, because I think we have to be mindful, because it is a county entity, and then you're, with it being an individual's classroom, there's still liabilities and things, and be careful about conversations. You want to make sure that whatever we do, we're doing it decent and in order. And I do support safe spaces for our children. And I think having something like that eventually where they can be comfortable and know that there's a place for them, I think will be really great. Good work.
Amaris, I wanted to say one thing. I think that some of the highlights that you had in your recommendations could easily overlap into economic development recommendations. Because this impacting businesses and that type of thing, I look at as an economic development type of initiative, because if anything, it will boost their clientele, their customer base, if they are openly indicating and expressing that all persons are welcome in business. So I would argue that some of that could easily overlap. I know, Josh, you were saying earlier, we can always revisit economic development, but I think
we just did.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Especially during the pride, we had the pride parade. We had that would be such a really great way to just solidify that so much. I just would love it. I think I would just love it. It really would be a boost.
So when you first started talking to Maris, I was thinking that when you were referencing the decals, that would like represent some kind of training or something that someone had gone through. But then I saw you got to a lot of like ease of access. So I think I understood what you're saying, that like this would really just be something that someone had to ask for. We're basically just having them available for people to say, hey, I support this. And really, that's a great step just in and of itself. Am I hearing you right?
Yes, that's how we were thinking about it, and
Cool.
that it would the program would have the training, access to training readily available, resources readily available, but that to get the decal, the sticker, whatever, that's easy for somebody to come into.
Yep.
and be a part of.
I like that. I like that a lot.
I agree. I think there could be that available for anyone who wants to show like a welcoming kind of space, plus maybe some kind of certificate or plaque or something for folks who do go through the training, like having that kind of bifurcated option. But I think far and wide showing acceptance, I think that's a really good open strategy.
Right. We want to make it easy for people to show acceptance. And that's, yep, I'm with you. Cool. Okay. Good stuff. For next steps, not that I'm trying to like lock you down to like what's going on, but do you need anything from us, from the department, as far as kind of starting to take those very good ideas and meld them into suggestions, into proposals? Or is it just kind of some time and kind of thinking about it?
Yeah, I mean, I guess one thing I was thinking about or wondering about is if there's anything at all similar or analogous that the city is already doing that we can, in any way that we can, kind of latch onto or model that, or, to use as a way of just making it easy for the city to take this next step as a potential recommendation. So if there are any things like that people are aware of, I don't know if there are any kind of opt-in, other kind of opt-in programs, but anything like that that we can look into, I think that would be helpful in how we craft this recommendation. And just any other ideas or any other challenges that we would need to, try to consider as we refine the recommendation as well.
Okay.
I love the idea. I mean, I think the decal, it just makes a whole lot of sense, but I'm thinking too, it would be really cool to maybe include like a QR code where people could be taken to a web page that explains what the decal means and what the steps that we've taken as a city to make sure everyone knows that they're welcome. And that would offer some training or information too that gives better context.
That's cool.
Phenomenal, Melissa. That would be phenomenal.
And then
Yeah.
businesses, maybe they're numbered too, where the business can be registered with their number, and that way they can get some additional exposure as a business that participates in this program.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because that would be important for people to understand. I know that Amaris mentioned something about some people may be hesitant to get involved in that type of thing, but if people understand how inclusive the non-discrimination ordinances are, it is not just focused on one protected class of persons. We have 17 protected classes of persons. And in all likelihood, businesses and business owners are going to fall into one of those categories. And so I would think they'd have a vested interest in wanting to openly express that they are inclusive of all customers and clients and patrons, rather. I would think they'd be excited to do that. But I think we just have to make sure that people don't have this misconceived notion that
Mhm.
it's only addressing one class of persons. We're talking race, national origin, religion, veterans, pregnant women, protected hairstyles, disability. I mean, it goes on and on. It's not just sexual orientation and gender identity and so forth.
South Carolina actually is doing this in their state, and they say that they can't keep the decals in stock, and they just say what you just said, Wanda, is it is saying that they are inclusive. This is just not LGBTQ business. It is a business that is inclusive, and so you already see that it is in South Carolina. So if it's having such a great response in South Carolina, and they can't, businesses are just utilizing this in their economic preview. I mean, it's doable. It's being done already in another state, and it's being received very well. They have over 50 businesses and organizations, and one school
Well, there you
has
go.
has asked for the claims across the state. It says in Charlotte and Augusta. So I think you guys are onto some really great things that are already happening around us. So yeah.
Okay, very good. Any further thoughts there before we move on? That was a great discussion. Okay, so the next two are mine. So the next one is city facilities. I'm gonna go ahead and go find real quick my notes. Okay, got it. Now share screen. Share. And I've got mine all together. I will zoom in as soon as I can find my Zoom. What? Oh, it's down on the bottom. Haha. I can computer all day. Okay. So the only thing that had really come up when we were originally talking about city facilities was bathrooms issue, bathroom labeling, bathroom availability. I admit I have not expounded on that, but I did do some research and looked up kind of what some other cities are doing, and I'd say the most common thing that progressive cities are doing is this top one. And so this is going to be less proposal and more brainstorming. So I apologize for that. This top one of declaring that all city-owned single occupancy restrooms would be changed to gender neutral. Now that is quite a few, right? But it's also a one-time thing. You go through all of the parks, and of course many of the parks are going to have multiple occupancies, so it wouldn't necessarily apply there. But you go through the parks and the city buildings and all the single occupancy, you just go through, you change the sign, and you're done. And you never have to go back to it. So there's no like recurring cost. It's a little bit aggressive, but I don't think it's that aggressive. Like I think that's a perfectly, yeah, right. I'm with you, Jake. Like it's a perfectly reasonable thing. That I don't see any reason why we couldn't do it. So I had a couple of like softer options here, like all city buildings must have at least one gender neutral bathrooms, or all the new park restrooms would be unisex. But the more I thought about it, the more I thought, no, well, we're just gonna recommend the top one, that we take all those single occupancy city owned bathrooms, get them changed to gender neutral, and then potentially, I think we talk about the park restrooms, because like there is a new park being built that is putting in unisex bathrooms, which is great. I'm glad that we already are making that move, and that as a new park is coming up, that someone is considering that and making good choices there. But I since we're already on that path, I thought maybe this will be an easy win that, we put it in front of the city council to say, like, heretofore, when we build a new park or when we do major renovations on an existing, that we make sure that it includes at least one unisex bathroom, if not all. So that is all I had on city facilities, but I do like going ahead and making that recommendation. So any thoughts or comments or questions there, or any new suggestions that I haven't thought of? Okay, cool. Well, that is an easy one then. We'll go ahead and table that for now. Certainly email or bring up in future meetings if you have any thoughts there. But yeah, I think that's a pretty easy recommendation that we'll make. So we will move on to services. Dre and I did not have a chance to meet on this. We had 3 times and something came up every time, but we did exchange some emails and exchange some ideas. So in my research, in our research, what I ran into, and it may be that I just wasn't seeing things or that I didn't get deep enough, but what I seemed to find was that a lot of cities that seem to have a good LGBTQI plus presence didn't have a lot of city-sponsored services, but rather what they did was they did an excellent job of pointing people to nonprofit organizations, LGBTQI-friendly organizations, like all kinds of different services that someone could use. And Jake, you've mentioned Atlanta a couple times, and that Atlanta website is phenomenal. There's and I should have linked it here, but I didn't think to. But they have a wonderful LGBTQ website that has lists of everything you could want, of health providers, which was brought up earlier, of legal providers, of just friendly businesses, of I've kind of got here as we're going through this multi-service nonprofits like North Star and Pride and like anything else where it's a really wonderful one-stop shop. Not only does it get good press to all of those places, right? They're saying, hey, I'm LGBTQI plus friendly, and so they get more attention. But anyone who's considering moving to Winston-Salem or just doesn't have a lot of connections or just wants to browse has a great place to go in order to find anything, in order to really find any kind of service that's in the city. So the suggestion, the proposal would be to make said webpage and have it be a specific, LGBTQIA plus website that has multiple tabs, multiple sections, that is essentially just a lot of lists of these different services that are either LGBTQIA plus owned or focused or just friendly, like ACLU or Family Services of Forsyth County. Places that have said that they're open, places that would probably have a decal in their window. So, and then as I've been hearing your other proposals and your other thoughts, like it dovetails so nicely, right? We could, and similar to the decals, I would think that we would want this to be easy. That someone reaches out, a therapist reaches out and says, I would love to be listed on your LGBTQIA plus website. I am friendly towards the members of all persuasions, of all, and I'd love to be listed there, and we do, right? There's no application process or whatever. It's an opt-in, essentially, just like the decal. But then I was thinking, as we were talking about more businesses, more training, maybe like a tiered thing that we could have. Well, first we could have, and I'm sorry, I know I'm all over the place because I've been collecting ideas as you guys have been talking. But we could have explanations for what the decal are. You guys talked about having a place that could go. We could have the QR code come here, right? but we could also have an extra symbol, a shield, a star, or whatever, that we could put next to a business that would show, oh, you've been through the training. You've been through, all of our base recommended training. You've been through our base and our enhanced recommended training. And so it wouldn't be mandatory, right? We're not telling people they have to, but we're giving a symbol on a very visible site that that not only are they friendly and are they opting in, but that they've voluntarily gone through some of the city training in that area. And so that is the main thing. I know I skipped right over the first one, so I'll go back to it here. The other thing that I found that I really liked that a few cities had done was appoint a specific LGBTQIA+ liaison for the police department. And larger cities have also done this for fire department and sometimes for a corrections officer, someone who could visit youth in the jail who had minor infractions. But I wasn't sure if that would be too much to ask for a city of our size. But the liaison for the police department really resonated with me, and I know Mir had some questions about that earlier, and I know that that's a huge challenge and very intimidating, right? If you're ever in a position where you're having to contact police about something, it can be very intimidating. And so from what I understand, most cities treat this liaison as someone who can be direct called. Their phone is published. That is an expectation, is that any member of the community, but obviously specifically LGBTQIA+, could call them with an issue, with a question, with a problem, and not have the potential of immediate police involvement of someone coming and knocking on their door. That they have a resource to go to at the police department who is going to be supportive and friendly, and yet have those police connections where they can potentially recommend issues or recommend solutions, solve issues, and so on. That person would need to have a direct line to the chief. If that person is is 5 tiers below the chief, then we've got problems, right? Because then they have to go through hopefully 4 tiers of LGBTQIA+ friendly people before maybe they can solve a problem. And so we would need to make sure that that person did have some power, some clout, at least some direct access to the chief, so that they could bypass any kind of politics. That person would be in charge of organizing and or giving LGBTQIA+ training to the police department. I wasn't sure, you can see, I apologize again, I know I'm all over the place. That first sub-bullet point, I wasn't sure if it would necessarily need to be a new position or if it could be an additional role for an existing position. And that just comes from my ignorance of the police department. If they already have a training director who would be happy to take on that role, is that okay? Is that enough? Or would we want to recommend full-time position, for this? I don't know if this warrants a full-time position. I don't know if a person in this position would have enough work to warrant a 40-hour-a-week job, or maybe I'm way off and they would. Maybe they'd have enough for 80 hours a week. I'm really not sure. So that's
Josh,
yeah.
I'm
please.
sorry, Josh, if I could jump in, I can share with you that our department is responsible for being the point of contact for the LGBTQIA+.
Oh. And
so we were credited actually for that on the Human Rights Campaign scorecard. And the police department, I would say, would be like other departments in that they would probably lean on our department in terms of training in this particular area and so on, not meaning that they wouldn't be able to get their own person because they are such a large department. But I didn't want anyone to have the impression that there was nothing that the police department had access to in terms of support or information as it relates to the LGBTQIA+ area. So that really is on our department as it stands right now. But of course, could be subject to change and to maybe further develop within their own internal staff. And a lot of these ideas actually, like for instance, about the directory and so on, we had talked about before, and we have to be mindful of the city's role in not endorsing any particular businesses. But what we have already done was some time ago, I feel like it might have been Jake who was copied on this, but anyway, it was a while ago that the marketing department did add a link to the North Star directory as far as businesses and services that could be accessed. And so that is already on the city's website as a result of a recommendation that was made quite a while ago. So that's taken care of. But what I was going to recommend as a whole is that everyone may want to take a look at the Human Rights Campaign scorecard. And if you have any areas that you would have suggestions for, so that we can maybe receive the full score for an area that we may not be receiving the full score for, that would be worth including in your recommendations. I was just going to suggest that, not just for you, but for everyone, all of the focus groups. That might be helpful.
Sure, very good. Regarding the links to businesses, I'd remembered that, but then I was surprised when I started hitting other cities and seeing that they didn't mind that at all. They're like, other cities absolutely have websites with kind of opt-in businesses, and I was wondering if that was it, if it was that that there's no barrier, there's no cost, there's no whatever, businesses just opt in to be listed on a site, and because it's so easy access, it doesn't show any city favoritism. The city's not judging who gets to show up.
Right, and that is something, I think that may be the nuance, who knows, that is opt-in. But regardless, I think that is something that is worth posing to our city attorney.
Oh, definitely.
Yes, I think that because we do want to make sure we're being compliant. And so
absolutely,
it'd be something certainly that we could pose to her when she's able to join us, hopefully for the next meeting.
Okay.
I may chime in. I think City Attorney Carmen had mentioned a few points related, like in some of our very early discussions, we had talked about how a dozen or so cities across the United States include LGBTQ as a status in their women and minority owned businesses to have specific kind of supports through those specific programs. And that was something where it sounded like from the attorney was saying that that's a little bit outside the scope of what we can do here. But it may be a totally different ballgame just to list friendly businesses or something like that. Like that's not as robust of a thing. It's not tapping into specific funding or designating so many contracts for whatever. It's just a different thing altogether.
Good thoughts. Okay. With the police liaison, thank you for clarifying that, Mondo. Like I knew that you guys had a relationship with the police department, but I did not realize that it was kind of a formal relationship, right? That you take those issues for the police department and help essentially kind of fill some or all of that liaison role.
Yes, and Melissa did share in the chat that she saw that they do now have a liaison in the police department, but still our department would still be accessible, and programs or any support that we can give them would still be available to them, even with that position. So she did include the link. Thank you, Melissa.
Thank you, Melissa.
Do have that.
Okay. Oh, I missed that. So, okay, well, I'll kind of revisit that then. It sounds like that might already be all set and not be a need. So that would be wonderful.
Yes.
And it's something we can publicize. What's that?
You are very efficient. You work quick.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'll say I had not heard of that either. So what you said about publicizing, like that may be a key point.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that could be another thing on our new amazing website. So
right.
So obviously a website there would involve some cost, right? Obviously, not only would there have to be the cost of development, but then there would have to be at least some maintenance of people receiving the requests for for, having a business listed, making sure, that it stays updated, that if a place is closed, that at some point they're taken off the list. We could dovetail in the request for decals onto the website, so that people could click a request decal button and then stop by City Hall to pick it up or whatever. But either way, that would take some resource. I don't know if it would take a full-time resource. I mean, it would probably take a full-time resource to get it up and running, to get it added to the city, to the city's website. But then going, from there on out, probably not 40 hours a week. I would certainly not ever think so.
Perhaps
but there would be some money involved. What was that?
I'm sorry. I was saying perhaps it could just be staff time.
It could be, yeah.
So hopefully it wouldn't be expensive if it could be done at all.
Agreed. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. But yes, the inclusion of businesses, we can check with City Attorney Carmen when we chat with her next. The inclusion of organizations and such, I think, is something we can definitely do. So that's exciting. But yeah, that's essentially what I came up with, was just trying to do a lot more publicizing. Okay, and we could have a little bit about police services that that people could contact the human relations department. DIA. No, I'm losing it.
Human Relations, DEI. Yeah.
DEI. It wouldn't come into my brain there for a second. Okay. I was like diversity, inclusion, and what's the other letter? But it's because I skipped to the other letter. Yeah. So that is what I've got. Any other thoughts or comments? Cool. Well, I will work on kind of getting that cleaned up and fleshed out a little bit more and have it ready for Attorney Carmen.
One question I do, since you were mentioning websites, is there language on the City of Winston-Salem's website already about this NDO being in effect now? Just something we could point to just to help get the word out, because I know North Star could easily do an email blast with their listserv or social media to point to the city site.
Yes, Jake, and I'm going to defer to Eleanor and Drashanta on that, because they have been working on a plan. And so, ladies, if you'd like to share the plan, if you want to talk to them about what you foresee doing in what order. We were just talking about that earlier, as a matter of fact.
As far as the website goes, there's just really some placeholder text there right now, just the very basic information. I've been working on much more detailed information with some really minimal definitions of the protected classes and explanation of the complaint process and stuff like that. And that should be up next week, fingers crossed. So that's where we are with the website. That was the first piece we wanted to get done with our outreach goals, because we want to put the link to the website on all of the things that we do. So we needed to have that done first, but we're definitely looking also at putting the similar information in brochures, flyers, stuff like that, trying to identify some of these friendly businesses that you guys have been talking about and seeing if they would be willing to put up a poster or have some brochures like that available. That's just all stuff we have in the pipeline right now. And of course, we are also working on trainings. And next week, we actually have a meeting with Equality North Carolina, specifically for the LGBT training. So it's all coming.
Thank you, Eleanor.
That sounds amazing. I would love to see it once it's live. I don't know if y'all could walk us through the website a little bit at our next meeting in March, just to kind of see once it's up and running. I also wanted to ask, I seem to remember some kind of staggered effective date for the NDO, where maybe there are different pieces that went effective at different times, or maybe that was an early draft and it didn't end up landing that way. But am I correct in thinking that like early January was an effective date and maybe there was another piece that went live at another time?
Yeah, what you're thinking about is the actual, the effectiveness of the ordinances were January, and then there was discussion about March when we're talking about any type of punitive repercussions. So I think that's probably what you were recalling, Jake.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, well, any other thoughts on the proposals that that the focus groups have made? Okay, well, that was great stuff today. You know, we've had some fits and starts. We've had some really good ideas come out, but then I think a lot of us buckled down this last month. Really did some research. Really put some good thought into it, and thank you everyone for not only that initial, but for all the comments today, all the extra thoughts, all the questions. Like, I feel like we are in a much better place than we were 1 or 2 months ago. And there's holidays, there's this little global pandemic going around. So there's lots of good reasons, but I love to see this level of progress. I think we aren't that far away from being able to take a lot of these thoughts and starting to write up like a single draft proposal. So I'm hoping maybe after next month, we'll be able to really kind of get a lot of these things that we still have a few questions about kind of settled in, and we can look at that. Not that it can't be a living document. It can certainly, you know, as we're writing it up, we can certainly add, change, whatever, but that would be great if pretty soon we can kind of start on that process of getting something put together so that we can get some good comfort with it within our group before we pass it on. So awesome.
Also, Josh, Eleanor has added the website link in the chat, and thank you, Eleanor, for doing that. And while we're talking about that, it segues into the final bullet item on the agenda, which is updates from me. And really, Eleanor has already provided that, because I was going to just mention the fact that they have been very diligently working on the website and training. And I was going to mention the meeting with Equality North Carolina that's coming up. And so really, those were the updates that that we were going to share with you today. So basically, we've completed the agenda, but I just wanted to make sure that I mentioned that so you wouldn't think that we skipped that item, because that was the last one.
Yep, no problem. I was just gonna pop back to the agenda I thought that's all that was next, but very good. Okay, well, before we close, does anyone have any further thoughts or anything they'd like to share?
I'll just.
You guys have done a great job. You can hear the work that's been done, the great ideas, the great thoughts. You know, looking to see at the webpage how this department yet continues to grow to be inclusive of the entire city. And so just the thoughts and research that you guys have done and put together, I just say kudos. I'm so excited. It was really great to sit in on your meeting today.
Good, thank you for attending. Jake, you had something?
Oh, I was just going to shout out for community events. North Star is partnering with Bookmarks tonight, in fact, at 6 p.m. for a young adult author talk or LGBTQ inclusive books. So that's happening tonight if anyone wants to check it out, if you're ever that way. And I'll also mention that North Star is doing some Pride Pack giveaways. So these little fun packs for youth on Valentine's weekend. So North Star will be open 5 to 7 on that Friday and noon to 2 on that Saturday and Sunday. Stop by if you know any LGBTQ youth who would like a Pride Pack and grab them one, or tell them to come on by.
That's awesome. Okay, cool. Well, thanks, Jake. Anything else? Well, thanks for coming today, everyone. Thanks again for all your input, all your hard work, and we will meet again next month. So take care. Have a good month.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye. Have a good weekend.